Hey there, fellow coders, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to this little talk that I'm doing, a little Facebook Live, an informal discussion on Bootstrap 4, especially because this is a newer version of Bootstrap. I touched on it in a past Facebook Live a few days ago, and I just want to dive a little bit further into some of the other features that are included with Bootstrap 4, and I'm going to be sort of tying this into my budgeting application that I'm building out as a part of a workshop series inside of Coders Campus. So let's get right to it. So let me go ahead and show my desktop. So what essentially we're going to be looking at today is inside of my Bootstrap, or inside of my application, my budgeting application. I want to create the first page where we're actually doing something with this application. So if I go ahead and start up my application that we had been building previously and go to the localhost 8080 and log in. Oh, shoot, what was the password I used? Oh, good. When I log in, or rather when I register, we created this registration page that is, mobile responsive. So if you were to have it as a small screen on your mobile phone, it would still look pretty. So essentially what we're going to be doing is we're using the same concept of taking a mobile first type development, and we are going to be putting it into use with the actual budgets. So we're going to be creating actual budgets, at least the first little framework of a budget. So, and before I jump into that, I just need to do some housekeeping work over here. I'm publishing this inside of the How to Program with Java page, but I also I want to publish this inside of my group as well. I have a Coders Campus group, so give me a second while I share this sort of off screen into my Coders Campus group. Share with, group name, Coders Campus. Let's talk Bootstrap 4. Post. Okay, there. So that's shared. That's done. So let's go into the app. Or no, I've done that. Let's go into the actual Bootstrap stuff that I want to be talking about today, which is over here. And specifically, I think it was called inside of content or components, was it list group? Yeah, list group. So this is sort of the idea that I want to be working with respect to listing out items that will be appearing inside of my view, essentially the budgets that are going to be appearing inside of my view. So it's nothing too groundbreaking or too crazy, but there are different things that we can do with it, like setting an active item. So this one sort of turns blue when it's active. You can have disabled items that sort of are grayed out that perhaps you can't click on. Links and buttons. So this is essentially what we're going to be doing. We want to create links inside of them so that we click on them, it actually does something. So this is the sort of things that we're looking at inside of the list group item. We can also make apparently contextual classes that make them look pretty with all these different colors. So there's a whole bunch of things that we can do with this sort of list group stuff, and this is very common. So it might not seem very sexy, so to speak, with respect to how this stuff looks, but this is how many apps work. This is the foundation of many applications, is using this sort of list group approach. So that is why I'm talking about this today, because it's so fundamental with respect to design and so on and so forth. So I think I like the links and buttons side of things. So we're going to be diving into that. But first, we need to actually get into the page that we want to be working with. So let's go ahead and log in. And we're going to be working with the /budgets endpoint. So like I said in previous videos about Spring Security, getting into the /budgets is actually the protected resource. So this is where we use Spring Security to do the authentication and authorization to make sure that the person is who they say they are, which is the username and password, and that they have authorization to view whatever page you're looking at, meaning the role. So the user role, or the admin, or the student, or the whatever role you want to create. So that's already talked about in a previous session. If you want to learn or read about or follow those past videos, you can do so at coderscampus.com/budget. So coderscampus.com/budget will take you to the actual workshop that right now is on sale. It's sort of half price. The price will be going up in the next few weeks because there's going to be so much content in there. It's $27, gives you access to the whole workshop from start to finish. You're going to see exactly how I create this real world budgeting application completely from scratch. So it's a really cool little exercise in making sure that you understand how a real, expert programmer builds a real world production level program, include with a database, front end, back end, all those beautiful things all put together. Cool, cool. So check it out, coderscampus.com/budget. All right. So inside of our code, I want to go to the budget.html page. Let me close all the other tabs. So the budget page is where we see the this sort of text where it says, this is where the budgets will be listed once this code is properly implemented. So basically, let's start things off with, I have created the budget controller. So the budget controller is just returning a model map that actually we don't even publish anything inside of the model yet. So essentially what we want to be doing is interacting with actual budgets. Now, I'm not going to waste time with creating, budgets and domain objects, so to speak, from scratch and doing things the proper way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create them and just sort of inject them into the model without relying on the database, just because that's not the focus of this conversation. I don't want to talk about databases. So let's go ahead and create sort of a list of budgets. Call it budgets equals new, let's say, array list. And we'll do Control-Shift-O to import our stuff. And let's see, we want to say budgets.add, and then we want to start adding budgets. So let's create some budget objects. Call it budget123, new budget. Budget1 dot, again, I want to stress this is not production level code that I'm writing right here. I'm creating very quick and dirty code just to get stuff off the ground so we can start looking into this list group and looking into Bootstrap. So let's call this the, I don't know, November or October 2017 budget. And we'll create another budget, budget 2, and we'll call it the November 2017. And you get the idea here, budget 3, maybe the December 2017 budget. Then we'll add budget 1, 2, and 3 to our budgets list, and then we will add budgets to the model. Model.add or put budgets. Cool. So we're taking an array list and we are populating it with individual budget objects, and we are putting it on the model. Now, another thing I should do is I'm going to do some Spring security stuff, specifically using the authentication principle annotation, which is really handy because all you have to do is put authentication principle next to the user that you have in your own specific application. So this is a specific user that I've created that it has the Spring security credentials attached to it. So it's a Spring security user. So because of that, I can use authentication principle, and it will automatically inject the user who's logged in into this user value right here, which is really, really cool. So now with this user value, I can say budget1.set, budget1.set user, right? It's actually a set of users, so I need to create a set of users. Again, this is not, I stress, not production level code that I'm creating here. This is not something that you would typically do. Users, no, I need to say new hash set of users, like so. And then I can say users.add user, right? Because this is the user from the thing. And then that way I can set budget, users, because budgets have a one-to-many relationship. Is that right? Budget has a one-to-many relation. Well, actually, it's a many-to-many relationship with users. So that means we need to do the opposite as well. We need to say well, no, I don't think we need to say that with this particular situation. I was going to say we need to say user.add budgets. But we might be able to get away with not doing that just because we're not actually doing strictly database-related stuff right now. Might be able to get away without doing that. So we'll see what happens. So we add the user to the budget. Is there anything else? I mean, budgets have IDs, but I don't know if it specifically matters that we have to set the ID. Again, not production level code. You would never manually set an ID unless you're doing unit testing. Okay, so it's kind of like a unit test I'm almost doing here. It's preparing like a test case. I'm doing the what's it called? The AAA. I'm doing the arrange, act, and assert, only I'm just doing the arrange part where I'm arranging my test case and adding it to the model. Okay, so now we have some budgets. We've added to the model, so now we can work with that on the model, right? We can go through and do something with it. So let's bring in XML namespace. Let's bring in some time leaf so we can start doing some stuff with time leaf. And we need to sort of map out what the code here does inside of the links and buttons with our list group. So let's copy the code for the list group. Let's paste it in. Let's delete our little preamble here with this is where the budgets will be listed. Let's delete that. And let's just see if this works. Oh, actually, I need to bring in the, Bootstrap code. So I don't have any Bootstrap code here. Let me go and grab some Bootstrap code, which is here through here. You would have seen me do this in a previous video, so I won't explain what I'm doing here in terms of copy pasting the Bootstrap code. There we go. So if we refresh the budgets page, oh, it's going to ask us to log in. That's fine. So there we go. We can see we have our the code is working in terms of the the Bootstrap code that we've copy pasted. Fantastic, great. We're in a situation where we're doing well. It's a good start, but this is not very pretty, right? This is not what I would say is production ready, beautiful list group of code. So first things first is let's take away this sort of was ipsum, lorem ipsum code type thing, which is the randomly generated code, and let's add in the actual data that we have pulled from our model. So the first thing we want to do is we want to iterate through our list of budgets. So how I want to do that is I want to create this sort of anchor tag, the ahref. We'll say the class is equal to all of the list group stuff down here, actually. I don't necessarily want to have one active yet. Say class, copy all that. So list group item action, and div, and oops, sorry. List, here we go. This is where I want to put it. Apologies, I was putting it in the wrong spot. So we have to have a div that says list group, div class list group, and then the anchor tags have an additional class or classes for list group item action. Okay, that's just the way it is. And then we have the link in there. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to do a th each, which means we're going to be iterating through each one of the items in a particular list of items, in a particular collection of items, which in this case happens to be a list of items. What is our list? Well, we bring in our Spring expression language. That's typically what we have to do whenever we're dealing with Timeleaf, the Spring expression language. And inside of here, we're going to put in our list. But specifically, a list inside of this sort of using a for each sort of syntax. Okay, so the for each syntax for Timeleaf, and this is funny, I haven't done this in a while, so I need to try to remember off the top of my head how to do this. We need to have a budget, and then do we say, oh shoot, so this is where Google comes in handy. This is a little bit embarrassing. I should know the th, the Timeleaf, th each syntax. Shake my head. Yeah, okay, cool. So I thought I was right with the colon, but anyway. So essentially budget in budgets, right? So I say budgets because it comes from budgets right here that you put on the model. So there is an actual budget sort of variable sitting on the model ready to be used. And that is right here in our th each syntax. So each budget will be assigned a variable name of budget right here, which is going to be accessible inside of the scope of our anchor tag. Okay, so there's two ways we could do this. One way would be to do a th text and to output the value of budget.name, or we can do an inline situation here if we want to add more to it than just the name of the budget itself. But for now, let's just do that. So let's leave it empty. Let's delete all the rest of them. Let's refresh our budget and see. So now we have October, November 2017, and December 2017 budgets. Okay, so we're bringing in the name of the budgets accordingly or perfectly. Now, like I said, if you wanted to with time, well, I guess we could talk a little bit about Timeleaf. We could do an inline. So we could say th inline equals, and I think it'd just say text. Again, I haven't done inlining in a little while too. So we could sort of take this out, the budget name, and we could put it in here. So we could put in, I think it's the syntax is double square brackets and then Spring expression language and then budget.name, right? I think that's another way to do it. Let me refresh. Yes, that works. And then that way we can do inlining. So we can say, here's a budget. So we can just sort of we can write out normal text as we would inside of any old anchor tag, and it will append that anchor or that text to the anchor tag thusly, if you will, just like plain old text. Otherwise, if we did it in the th text, we'd have to wrap this with string quotes as well as concatenation and so on and so forth. So really, it's an either or situation. I guess I'll leave it as inlining for now because I'm too lazy now to change it back. But we still don't have a situation where this is really that pretty, right? This doesn't have any sort of title to it. It doesn't have any sort of formatting in terms of making things look pretty. So how do we do that? Well, I think I want to bring in the card or cards component like we were using before. So the card component inside of Bootstrap, if we scroll down, we can see some examples of cards with images and stuff. In this case, we don't need to go crazy with images because I don't think a budget would have an image associated with it. That doesn't really make much sense. You can have one that kind of is unassuming with a card title, but I think the one I like the most is the one that has a header and footer, which is right here, header and footer. So I'm going to copy this card, and essentially what I'm doing here with this card is inside of the body of the card, where the button is and where the special title is, this is where I'm going to list out the budgets. Okay, so the budgets are going to be sort of nested inside of a nice card with a header and footer. Probably no button, but just the card will make it look a little prettier. At least I think in my head, it looks in my head like it's prettier. We'll see what it actually looks like when we get it programmed out. So I pasted that code that I just copied from right here, copied this code, pasted it into this code here. And what I want to do is, instead of saying featured for the card header, I'm going to say your budgets. And instead of making it a div, I'm going to make it like an H2, so it's nice big text. I'm going to get rid of the title, because the title, we don't really need one. We don't really need the paragraph classes or the button. So I'm going to delete all this stuff inside the body. And instead, I'm going to take our list group, our group of budgets, and I'm going to move this up into the scope of our the body of our card. Okay, see what I did there? So the card body class, div class, whatever, has the list group that we created earlier. All right, so now if we go to our budgets and refresh, now we're getting to a place where things look a little bit nicer. Now, I always like to pretend like I'm on a mobile phone, so I shrink the size of the browser. Now, one thing I see here is that the budgets that are listed are contained in their own little list group, which makes sense. I mean, that's what I asked it to do. But I really wish they would wrap, or they would extend out to the full length of the page. So I wonder if there's a way to do that. Again, this is an informal discussion on Bootstrap. I haven't done any preparation work. You're seeing exactly what it looks like for inside the brain of a coder who's seeing this stuff and who needs to figure out how to make this stuff work the first time. I haven't done any preparation work. That's the whole point of these Facebook Lives. They're fun. We'll just see what happens. Very nonchalant. So how do I do this? How do I figure out, let me go to list group and see if there's any sort of indication of one that sort of spans the entire length or width of the window, which I don't think there was. There's none that really show me that there's an example of one that spans the full width. So JavaScript behavior, using data attributes, fade, tab, events. Oh, cool, there's events we can do too. That's always fun to have events to mess around with. So, okay, it doesn't look like there's anything that allows the list groups to really fully expand. I guess we could check the Google. We could say Bootstrap for list group full width or something. Making list group full width. All right. Let's see what happens. So there's no accepted answer in here yet. The problem is that you're missing a call block class. Okay, so that's true. So that's part of the grid functionality for Bootstrap, is using the column markers. So I wonder if that would be something that we could implement. Let's see. So inside of each href would be its own row. How would we do this? First, let's see if we can add a class. Just say column extra small and just see what sort of behavior we get out of that. Okay, so it doesn't seem to be doing anything. We could fully specify 12 in terms of width. So it's almost like the card body might be hijacking our the width part. So we can do an inspect. We can hit F12 and inspect and see what's going on here. So border top left radius. Okay, that's just going to control the how rounded the edges are. Let's see, block. So there's some padding here. If we get rid of the padding, okay, that's not what we want because we want the padding. Padding makes it look good. It's more margin that we want to care about, but we don't want margin bottom. We want margin left and right. So the width is 100. So I believe perhaps the CSS that we're dealing with is inside of the card body class. So yeah, when I hover over card body inside of my inspector here, you can see the sort of green outline that is surrounding the list group items that we have. So that tells me that probably there's some sort of padding or margin happening inside of the card body class itself. So if I go to the card body class, scroll up, I see padding. So there we go. If I get rid of the padding, it gets a lot closer to what I want in terms of the look and feel of my budgets. Now, one thing that I don't like about this is there's some additional lines going on with the top and the bottom. I might not be able to do anything about that. But at least we have an idea of what's causing the display issue that I want to fix here. It's coming from inside of the card body. So it's almost like I want to say Bootstrap for, you know, card or remove card padding. Removing padding gutter from grid columns? No. Card, remove card block class. Cards, spacing, no gutters. Because there's one thing I can do, which is inside of the div class of the card body, I can just do an inline style and say padding 0, right? And that should get rid of the padding. So if I refresh the page, you see here it looks sort of like the way I want it to look. So I think that's more or less acceptable, in my opinion, about how this stuff should look or function. So the next thing I want to do here, just to sort of finish up this discussion with Bootstrap, just to put a fine point on it, is when I click on these things, nothing happens, right? Essentially, all it's doing is the anchor tag is pointing to the pound, which is just, you know, it's doing nothing. It's just going to nothing inside of itself. So it's not doing anything on the page. So what I want to do is I want to change that anchor tag from a pound symbol to something else. So in order to do that, because I've assigned inside of my budget controller, I have forcibly assigned IDs. Again, you would never do this in production level code inside of my controller. Normally, you would load a budget from the database, and the budget in the database would have an identifier already inside of it. It would already have an ID field that you could just get. So you would never hard code an ID. That's bad practice, in my opinion, and probably in the opinion of many programmers. So, but what's important here is that we can get access to the ID on the model inside of our view. So that is important because the href will depend on that. So when I click on October budget, what I want it to do is go to /budgets/ and then the ID of the budget. So /1, for example, /2, /3. So whatever budget it is, it'll go to that budget's ID. Now, if I hit enter, you're going to get a 404 error because I haven't yet created the screen where it actually looks into the individual budget itself. All I'm doing right now is looking at the group of budgets that we have sort of created in our own list of budgets. So fair enough, just to give that little preamble. So what I want to do is I want to use timeleaf to make the href dynamic, okay? Because remember, we're iterating through over here in our each, we're iterating through each of the budgets in our list, our collection that we passed in from the model, or from the controller, which is on the model. So what I want to do here is I'm going to use href to create a dynamic href. And I use that, I create that using the @ it's almost like Spring Special Language, only it's using the @ symbol. And again, I haven't done this in a long time. Oh, I'm so ashamed of myself. I believe it's the @ symbol. I believe it's the @ syntax that does this. So anyway, bear with me. We'll see how it goes. So this is what we do. We create a URL like this. So we say /budgets, because obviously we want to go to /budgets, and then / a budget ID. But when I type in budget ID here, timeleaf isn't going to know what budget ID means. I could have typed in dog poop here. It wouldn't know. It wouldn't understand what I'm talking about. So we need to tell it what I mean when I say budget ID in the brackets here. I'm essentially sending in a path variable, but not declaring the path variable. If you want to, an analogy between Timeleaf and Java, this is essentially a path variable. In Java, the path variables are defined inside of an annotation, specifically the path variable annotation inside of the method signature, just to throw some big words at you. In here, where there's no method signature, all we do is we do round brackets, and we say budget ID equals Spring expression language, and we tell it what budget ID to grab. What budget ID do we grab? Well, we have a budget declared inside of our TH-each. Remember, we're going through a for loop of each budget. So we have access to the budget variable name. So the budget variable name we can inject in here, and we can say budget.id. So we can grab the individual ID of each budget as it's creating this dynamic list of budgets on our page. Remember, the code I have highlighted here is going to be creating a list of budgets on the view on the page, right? So for each one of those budgets, we're grabbing the individual budget ID and injecting it into the path variable here so that it should go to the appropriate endpoint when we click on it. Again, we'll see if I did this correctly. Hopefully I did. Again, it's been a little while since I've done this. Refresh the page. So now if I hover over, well, the first one looks like it's working. The second two don't. So if I click on the first one, it goes to budget/3, which is great. That's what I wanted to do. It goes to budget/3. But looks like the other ones don't have an ID. Because I click on them, there's nothing in there. So what's going on with that? Budget controller. Oh, I see. Typo, budget1.setID. So I had only set the ID on budget1 each time. So that's the perils of copy pasting code. Whoopsie. So budget2, budget3, save my code. It reboots the server because I'm using Spring Dev Tools, which is really cool. I highly recommend Spring Dev Tools, which you can bring in your POM file. Anyway, so it reboots the server, relog in. I have my budgets. If I hover over them now, I see 1, 2, 3. So if I click on the first one, it goes to /1. If I click on the second one, it goes to /2. If I click on the third one, it goes to /3. Okay, so this is where I would create another view. So there would be another HTML page that would reflect an individual budget that I would then have it forward to or load up when I click on each one of these budgets. So this is yet more HTML, or rather let's call it Bootstrap code that we're going to be using to make this next page look pretty. Cool. But for now, there you go. Those are the budgets. And I should probably also have some sort of button. Actually, let me do that before we end things. We should have a button that allows you to create a budget, right? Because otherwise, how are you going to create a budget? So perhaps inside of our header, we can do that. So we can we can turn this your budgets into a div. Will it allow us to do that? No, it won't inside of an H2. Really? It won't allow us to do that? I guess you can't put a div inside of a header. So what we're going to have to do is turn this into the full thing into a div, because you can put a div inside of a div. And we're going to have to inject some sort of a class to make this bigger font. So I wonder if there is Bootstrap code to do that. So if I say Bootstrap for header class, typography. What is this? Typography. Bootstrap includes simple and easily customizable typography for headings. So all headings are available. H1, H2, H3. Well, of course, that makes sense. You can do H1s. Although I guess what I'm really doing here is I would say H1 or H2 inside of here. Am I just being dense? Perhaps I'm being dense. And then, although I want it to be in a div. So I want this stuff to be in a div because I want to specify that it has a certain length. Here we go, P-class H1. This is what I was looking for. So I want to have a div. But then I'm going to have, okay, so what am I doing here? Let me think. Let me breathe. So I'm going to have two divs, and each one is going to have a call XS tag on them. One which will take up the majority of the width of the column. The other will have just off to the right, which is going to be like a button where you can add the code to, or add the plus button to. So essentially what I want to create here is div class row. And then inside of the row, we can have a div. I think we might be able to have an H2 and say class equals call SM, and let's call it 10. So it takes up 10 of the 12 spaces. So with Bootstrap uses a grid format where there are 12 columns, and you need to use all 12 columns in any given row. So here we're creating a row, and inside of here in the row, we need to specify how many columns we're using. And I don't want to use SM, actually I want to use XS, which means extra small. Extra small means a mobile phone. So on a mobile phone, it will appear that your budget's header will take up 10 of the 12 columns. And then under it, I can have a div, or a button, let's say. I might need to wrap it in a div, though. I can have a div with a button inside of it. Oops. The div will have a class of column XS2. So 10 plus 2 is 12 inside of one row. So we have one row, which is this class. Inside of that row, we have two elements that are going to be taking up 12 of the columns, which is perfect. We want it to add up to 12. If we had it adding up to 14 or something, that would be incorrect. It always needs to add up to 12 inside of any given row. So now our button, let's see, I can put a plus symbol in here and say type equals button, and the ID of this is, add budget button or something like that. Let's take a look at what that looks like. It's not going to be hugely pretty. Okay, so interesting. It did not work in terms of forcing this to work properly. This should have, in my opinion, it should have spaced things out better. So let me create this instead of in a H2 class. Let me create it in a div. Class. So, and the contents of the div will be your budgets. Let me just see if that works. Again, it doesn't work. That's surprising to me. Row div class column XS10, column XS2. So let me go to the grid examples inside of Bootstrap. Again, this is what these lives are all about. You see the raw, uncensored craziness that happens whenever you're coding. So let's go to layout, grid. So class, do we have to have a container? I don't know if I have to have a container, a row, and so I don't think we do, but we'll see. And then column, small. So here they're not as explicitly saying a size, so it just will create 3 columns that are all equally sized. Let me see an example that actually has, oh, interesting, call 6. Although that's a shorthand, I think, to say, I don't think it matters if I exclude the XS. It might. Let's see. Ah, it does. Okay, interesting. So what I was typing in before with column XS, this was the Bootstrap 3 code. Okay, this is how you did it in Bootstrap 3. Perhaps in Bootstrap 4, they've made an update so that you can't use that anymore. Oh, I see column and then column whatever, blah, blah. Okay, so you just say column first, which in my opinion is kind of annoying. Hey, what do I know? I'm not a developer in the Bootstrap team. So you say column and then the XS10. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so interesting. It actually didn't put it exactly where I would have expected it to put it. I would like the plus symbol to be further off to the right. So that's interesting that there's a difference there between those two things. So I made this 11 and 1 instead of 10 and 2. Interesting. Huh. Whereas if I just said column 10 and column 2, that is pretty much exactly what I want, almost. I would say column 11 and column 1. I really want this to be, yeah, exactly. That's what I would want it to look like. And then as you shrink the screen, the plus button comes along with you. Although not to that extent. I guess there's nothing I can really do to fix that. Unless I wanted to, anyway. Okay, so let's take a look at this code and figure out what's going on in the grid system that's different from Bootstrap 3. So variable width content, I don't care about that. Responsive classes, column 8, column 4. So yeah, there is, column small 8, column small 4. So they do have that code. Is it not XS? Maybe it's not XS for extra small anymore. Oh, so extra small is just nothing. Ah, gotcha. So this used to be XS, but now it's just column nothing versus column SM, medium, large. Okay, so that makes sense as to why when I put XS in there for extra small, nothing was working, because they've taken that out. See, little things that you learn when you're switching from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 4. There you go. You learned it here first, ladies and gentlemen, unless you already knew this, in which case, whoopsie. Okay, so that's very good. That's very close to what I want. So where do we go from here? Okay, I want to change the look and the feel of that plus button, though, because the plus button doesn't look very sexy. It's just a gray little thing with a plus. So inside of Bootstrap, normally there are whatchamacallits, themes. How do I get back to where I was? Was it in Get Started? Yeah, which is documentation. Okay, so I want to look at, is it layout? Normally they have the glyph icons or glyphicons or however you want to pronounce it. Utilities? Where are there no glyphicons anymore? Bootstrap 4 glyph icons, migrating, dropped the glyphicons icon font. Interesting. So the upstream version, drop the glyphicons icon font. If you need icons, some options are the upstream version of icons or font. Awesome. Interesting. So they got rid of it. That's kind of disappointing. I really like the library. So I have to go right to glyphicons.com to get access to some of the icons. That's disappointing. Let's see what else. Drop the, okay, blah, blah, blah. That's okay. I don't mind that. So Font Awesome, I guess I'll use. So I believe Font Awesome has a CDN that we can use, if I'm not mistaken. No JavaScript required, one font, 675 icons, blah, 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 blah. So let's see an example of how to use this stuff. Get started. So, I need your email address. Do we really need to? No, here we go. Using CSS. So link path to font. Awesome. Is there no CDN for it? Let's see. Font Awesome CDN. Okay, it's on Mac CDN. Cool. Copy to clipboard so we can paste that in here. Link rel is a style sheet. Href is to the, whatchamacallit, CDN. Fantastic. So that helps us out there. So now we can just start using the fonts. Let's see. Icons. Okay, so what I want to have is essentially some sort of a plus button. If I just type in plus, can I find... Here we go, plus with a circle. That looks good. So I want to do plus circle. So how do I do a plus circle? It's like this. Bada bing, bada boom, copy paste the I class. So essentially what I'm going to do is, instead of having a plus button here, I'm going to paste in the I class with the Font Awesome plus circle code. Go back in here, refresh. So now we have a little bit of a plus symbol. And maybe I don't want it to be a button at all. Maybe I just want the actual... whatchamacallit, class. Yeah. Now, is there a way to make it bigger, or is that sort of what it's wrapping itself to the size of what's available in here? So like if I increase the size, yeah, because it's bound by the size of the div. So I essentially would need to make the div bigger. I wonder if I made this, is it the row? Div class column 11, div class row. If I made this row a bit bigger, so if I said I added some padding, style padding, add 1.5 ems of padding. So that added, I guess we would need margin, not padding, because that added padding around it, which is not what we wanted. I guess we want margin. Do I want margin? No. Essentially, we want height. I want the insides to be bigger or have a margin inside. So if I added margin here, and margin inside of my other column. That's not working either. Okay, what if I added margin on my I class? I don't know if you can do that or not. No, you can't really do that. Well, this is a dilemma because, well, let's see what this is going to look like. So if I'm on a small screen, there's just this tiny little plus button. It's kind of unassuming. I just want it to be bigger. I just want it to be bigger. So what if I added, if I said height is 1.5 ems, but that doesn't really make it bigger. If I say width, that doesn't make it bigger either. Oops. I essentially want, I believe it's, was it font size? Yeah, so font size will make it bigger, right? So that's what I'm getting at here. So I guess I could just change the font size to be, you know, what, 2 ems? Let's try. That makes it quite substantial of a button, or substantial of a an I class, or a font awesome. Whatchamacallit. So font size 2 ems. Refresh. So now we have this nice big button. Now the your budgets, I also need to add the header class. So I say each 2. There we go. That looks better. So now we can almost increase the size of that. That probably would have fixed our problem before. So hold on a second. Let me get rid of the font size. Let me just see if that fixes. Okay, no. So it's still, it doesn't wrap to the size because now the size is bigger, right? We have more room here, but it's not utilizing that size. So that's too bad. Is there a way for Font Awesome to automatically size itself? Font Awesome, you know, automatic size increase or something? To increase icon size relative to their container, use the FA blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's see. To increase, use LG 2x, 3x, 4x. Okay, so let's try 2x. FA, then FA whatever, then FA 2x. So FA plus circle, FA 2x. To make it twice as big. Okay, I like that. That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. We could make it 3x. Kind of really big. So this is just your own call that you have to make. 2x. And we just switch the size of the containers here. So instead of being 11 and 1, we can make it 10 and 2. Just to move that over a bit. There we go. I think I like that. It's almost like I want 2.5 sizes. But there is no 2.5 size, is there? 2x, 3x, 4x. Is there any way to make it not increase the size? So this fixed width. That's where, yeah, no. List icons, bordered, rotated, stacked. Okay. So if we change it to 3x, that's going to increase the size of our container just a tad bit. All right, let me do 2x and be done with it. Okay, so there we go. And then inside of the plus icon here, we also want to make this clickable, right? The ahref needs to be able to point to something. Make it point to pound right now, so that when we hover over it, it actually, you know, does something. Now it's funny, I added the anchor tag class to it, and maybe Bootstrap changed the look and feel of it as soon as I did that, which is kind of annoying. So perhaps we should make this a button. Although then it's going to look like a button. Type equals button. Button. Right? It's going to look like a button inside of whatever. And if I say button and the class is btn primary. Oh dear. Do I care? I kind of just wanted the circle, which is what I need when I say ahref. Then it changed it to be smaller, which is kind of strange. If I made it 3x, okay, there we go. Oh dear. So there we go. We got our plus, and it's a button, or it's a link that we can click on. So that click, essentially what we need to do is when we click on it, we need to send it to another endpoint, right? We can send it to budgets.add or something, right? So we can add a budget. But really what we want to do is we want to send the post. So we want to make it post, but I'm not going to do that here. I just wanted to get to the point where we have a nice little plus button that when we shrunk the page would appear nicely inside of our mobile responsive sort of look and feel. So there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, a long discussion on Bootstrap 4 and how we can tweak it to get it to work exactly like we want it to work. It takes a little while, but at least the design is a little bit sexier than something that you could probably code up yourself. I myself am not a designer, so anytime I do something like this, I rely on Bootstrap to make my stuff look nicer. So let me end the discussion by saying, again, if you are interested in checking out put this on the screen. If you're interested in checking out the whole series where I talk about all of these things from start to finish, this is where I'm building out the fully functional budget application from scratch, step by step by step, in much more organized format in terms of these videos. It's not going to be me rambling too much. This is where I'm doing my rambling on Facebook Live, and then inside of the course, these videos will be much more polished. So that's where you're going to be able to go in. You can grab access to the full series for $27, very low cost. It's going to be a really, really big library of videos. I'm anticipating it'll be like over 15 hours of videos, taking all of the concepts that you're going to learn within full stack Java. So that means we're going to be talking about JavaScript, jQuery, HTML, CSS, Bootstrap 4 specifically, Java, plain old core Java, as well as Java frameworks like the Spring Framework, Spring Data, Spring Security, Spring Boot. We're also using Hibernate to do the communication between the land of Java and the databases, as well as MySQL to do the actual database creation and queries. Spring Data, I don't know if I said that yet. So it's going to take in a whole wealth of information that you hopefully will have learned inside of the Java Super Course, or if you're a Coders Campus member, you will get access to the Java Super Course inside of Coders Campus. So the Java Super Course is what teaches you the core Java stuff, as well as the Spring stuff that I was talking about with the Spring Framework and so on and so forth. So all this, it pulls all of that information, all of that knowledge, puts it into use in building a real-world application. That's what this workshop series, this is what all my workshop series are all about. This specific one is about building a budgeting app. I've done workshop series with creating an e-commerce website, a pizza ordering system, a RESTful web, what's it called? Weather application. So I built out just the RESTful backend without any head, so a headless app where you can interact with getting information from a weather system for local weather and so on and so forth. So there are all these workshops. These are all available inside Coders Campus. So if you want to be a Coders Campus member, I'd strongly suggest signing up for Coders Campus. There's a great offer for getting or becoming a Coders Campus member when you do sign up for this budget course that I'm talking about right now via the link below right here, coderscampus.com/budget. So if you go to that link and you purchase this individual budgeting course, you're gonna get access to a really, really good offer for joining Coders Campus. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. So you can check that out yourself if you are interested. All right, cool. So thanks so much for watching me or listening to me ramble through this entire video series. Really means a lot that you watched this whole thing if you got to the end and actually saw this whole thing. Hopefully you got a lot of value out of it. And I look forward to doing this again, hopefully tomorrow or the next day with the next installment in this series. So take care of yourself, fellow coder. Happy learning. As always, bye for now. This is where I go over to the end broadcast. I wasn't prepared for this. There we go.